We've got some very exciting plans for races and adventures in 2025. So as usual this time of year, I'm going to run through all of that, including a look at some of the new content that I'll be publishing on the channel, some of which will be a little bit different for me. I've also had a major change in one of my key sponsorships after many years, which will mean that I'll be testing some new products as well. So stick around until the end to hear all about that. But first, I thought I'd take a look back at 2024, which was another season full of travel, of racing, and of adventures. I started the year with a trip down to San Francisco in February to race the Big Alta 28K. This was just a fun race for me, more of a rust buster, but it was a great chance to finally meet two other YouTubers in person for the first time, Ryan Clayton and Dave Dillon of Chase the Summit, both of whom I've since become good friends with. And you can check out episode 1 of Time on Feet for footage from that. In March, I then got to spend a few days down in Utah on a camping trip with the team at Outdoor Vitals and another big group of content creators. So this year got off to a great start for me professionally as I continue to grow my network of people that I consider colleagues and friends to learn from and to bounce ideas off of. In April, Audrey ran a local race here in Vancouver, the Diez Vista 50K, as her first goal race of the season. I planned on racing as well, but I had an Achilles issue flare up, so I decided to take it easy instead. But Audrey had a great race, which you can hear about in episode 3. And then in late April, we headed to South America, where we hosted a 10-day trail running retreat in partnership with Vagabond Trails. And this was just an amazing adventure. In fact, we enjoyed it so much that we're going back this coming April, which I'll tell you more about shortly. We were home for the rest of May and June, where we trained on our local trails, and Audrey raced in 2 more events, including another 50K. And then in July, we hit the road again for Colorado, starting in the San Juans, where I fast-packed the Hard Rock 100 course, which we documented in my film, Soft Rock. I worked with my buddy Derek Lytle on that, and together we captured some pretty incredible footage of the course. So be sure to watch that film if you haven't already. The next week was Hard Rock, and I ended up jumping in to pace a friend of a friend. And you can see all of that in episode 5 of Time on Feet, which was actually the best performing of the series this season. And finally, we headed to the nearby Sawatch Range so that Audrey could run the High Lonesome 100. She was paced by her 2 friends, Coral and Heather, the first time that she's actually ever had pacers in a race, while I provided support from the Ross Monster. And we made what turned out to be a beautiful film, if I don't say so myself, which is actually ready to publish. We're just holding off to do an in-person screening first at an Arc'teryx store here in Vancouver, who are the sponsors of the film, but that'll be coming to YouTube the weekend of February 7th, so stay tuned for that. And then it was off to Europe to spend the rest of the summer, starting with a week in Iceland, where we hosted a group hiking and camping trip in partnership with Trova Trip. The weather was wet and wild, and we had a great time. And right after that trip ended, we hopped over to Switzerland, where I then had just 24 hours before running my own goal race for the year, the Swiss Alps 100. This was my Hard Rock qualifier for the year, and also a Western States qualifier, and a Badwater preferred qualifier. I wasn't successful in either of those first 2 lotteries, and I'm still waiting to hear about my Badwater application for 2025, but the race was beautiful. Tough, very hot, but beautiful. And that film is coming up next here, right after High Lonesome. I then headed to Annecy, France to recover and catch up on some work, while Audrey hosted a women's-only fast pack on the Tour de Mont Blanc. And that was a really successful first women's-only event, so she'll be doing another, which I'll tell you about here shortly, but you can see all of that in episode 7. She then joined me for another week in Annecy, which is starting to feel like a home away from home for us, before we then hopped on a bus to head to Italy to fast pack the Alta Via 1 in the Dolomites. And that will likely be the last film that I published from last season, sometime in the spring, but I promise that it will be worth the wait. We spent a few days in Venice before then heading to Ireland to spend the rest of September touring around Ireland and Northern Ireland, which was really the trip of a lifetime. We documented all of this in episode 8, including the shorter of the 2 races that we did there. But I've still got 2 full-length films coming from this trip, including one about our 3-day fast pack on the Wicklow Way, and one about the Eco Trail Wicklow 50-mile race that we did at the end of the month. And then we headed home, which we thought would be the end of our season, but we had a last-minute invitation to Hong Kong to race the Trans Lantau by UTMB, which we couldn't pass up. I talked about our heat training protocol for that race in episode 9, but we've got a full-length film coming from that as well. So a big season, and we launched some other projects as well, including merch, like this shirt that I'm wearing, and you can see all of that in my online store at jeffpeltier.com. We also did 2 theatrical screenings this year at a theater called VIF here in Vancouver. First of my documentary from the Moab 240 back in the spring, and then my film from Soft Rock here in the fall. Both to sold out audiences, so thank you so much to the local community for their show of support. My goal now is to produce at least 1 film annually that I consider theater worthy, and maybe in the future we'll take these screenings on the road as well. I also began publishing a new series that I'm calling The Mud Room, which are unscripted gear breakdowns from our races and adventures, really just for the gear nerds out there. I've got 6 episodes up already with lots more to come. And on a personal note, I got what was my first and might be my only magazine cover in the spring issue of Canadian Trail Running. And this was from a really fun shoot that my good friend Bryce just happened to have been hired to do, along with a short video for social media. And finally, Audrey launched her coaching business last year. She received her ultra running coaching certification from UESCA, and she started working initially with a handful of clients before slowly expanding her roster. And she's now opening up her roster to a final set of clients, so if you're interested, visit her website to set up a video call to see if there's a fit to work together. She's been getting my butt in gear over these past few months, and likely she'll be helping me with my own training throughout the coming season, which brings me to 2025. Now, first up, Audrey will be racing the Desert Rats 100K in Colorado in April. And this will be her Western States and UTMB qualifier because she's hoping to race UTMB in Chamonix again in 2026. We'll then be heading to South America again for April and May, starting with Peru, where we'll be hosting a group trekking trip to Machu Picchu on the Salcante route, which is the route less traveled because it's a little bit more rugged and remote, but we'll be providing bag transfers, so it's a great introduction for anyone newer to trekking, and it's open to all levels of fitness and experience. We'll then be heading to Ecuador to host another trail running retreat similar to 2024, but we've tweaked the itinerary just a bit to focus more of our time in the mountains, where we'll be tackling some of the best trail runs in the country. We'll be staying in really comfortable lodges each night and enjoying some really nice meals. But this is best suited for intermediate level trail runners because we'll be tackling some fairly technical terrain as well, and of course, running at altitude, so this should not be your first time running on the trails. Having said that, we'll be doing some short workshops along the way on things like gear and nutrition and running technique, so it's still a great chance to learn. We opened up both of these trips to our supporting channel members first, and they are booking up quickly, but there is still room, so if you're interested, visit the links below to learn more. In late June, we'll be heading to California, where I'll be volunteering at Western States. We'll then be heading to Colorado to volunteer and hang out at Hard Rock again. But I am hoping to fit in at least 1 race or likely self-supported adventure in either California or Colorado, and I've got some big ideas for what that might be. So I'll hopefully have an update for you soon on that. And like in years past, we'll then be heading to Europe for the rest of the summer. Actually, Audrey will probably head over first because she's hosting another women's only trip, this time on the Alta Via 1 in the Dolomites, to retrace the route that we did on our own this past August. I'll then meet her in Chamonix once she's done, and we'll hang out at UTMB and likely we'll be crewing for our friend Coral, who's racing the 100-miler, before we then set off with a group on the Tour de Mont Blanc. Audrey, of course, did this as a women's only trip last year, but it's been 2 years now since I've done it myself, so I'm really looking forward to getting back out there. And registration hasn't opened yet for either of these trips, but we expect them to sell out really fast. Our first TNB 2 years ago sold out in less than 24 hours. So the plan is to open this up again to our supporting channel members first, and then any remaining spots will be available via the newsletter. So be sure to sign up for that if you haven't already. Now, I really thought this year was going to be my year for Hard Rock, but fortunately, I found an even bigger goal. And in late September, I'll be running the brand new Mammoth 200-miler in California. My friend Hillary is race directing, and the course looks beautiful. And you can see a preview on Sally McRae's channel, because she was involved in helping to put the course together, and they published a film. I don't think she'll be racing, but there are a bunch of other really big names already signed up. So I'm really excited for that. And of course, I've got my buddy Derek Lytle on board to help me with the film. I interviewed him recently as part of the initial batch of episodes for a new podcast that I'm launching this season. I'll be talking shop with many of my and your favorite creators in the running space, including filmmakers, gear reviewers, podcasters, and photographers. And I hope that you'll find all of these conversations interesting too. I mainly wanted to experiment with the format, and so I thought that this might be something a little bit different. So expect that to launch in the coming months. Now, I mentioned the Mudroom series that I launched recently, and in doing so, it became really obvious just how repetitive my gear lists have become. I'm sure you can pretty much guess which shoes and pack and jacket that I'm going to use for a given race or adventure. And that's because I've been a Salomon athlete for 11 years, almost my entire trail running career. Their gear just works for me, especially their shoes, and I really have appreciated their support over all of these years. But the reality is that I've completely lost touch with what else is out there, and there's plenty of innovation happening, especially in road running shoes. So moving forward, you'll still see me doing a lot of my training and racing in Salomon shoes and apparel, but I'll no longer be an exclusive Salomon athlete, meaning that you'll also see me testing out other brands as well. And I think this will make for much more interesting content, particularly when it comes to my Mudroom series. And I'll talk more about this and how I plan on working with other sponsors in another video soon. But you can expect to see that change in a lot of the newer content that we'll be shooting starting this spring. And last but not least, I want to thank all of our supporting channel members. We launched an exclusive Discord community last year for channel members, where we have a lot of fun talking about everything from gear to training and seeing photos from everyone else's adventures as well. As I mentioned, this is where we'll first be launching all of our group trips, and it's open to both levels of membership. The second tier, though, also gets you access to bonus content like director's commentaries. So if you're interested in becoming a member, then click the join button on my channel from within a web browser. You do need to be a subscriber first. And if you already are a member but have yet to join the Discord, head over to the community tab on YouTube to find a link to that. As you can probably tell, we're trying to innovate and to experiment with different types of content. But at the end of the day, the long-form videos from our races and adventures will always remain the core of this channel, and those will always remain free to access. So thanks for following along, and I hope to see you on the trails in 2025.